The first sign something was wrong wasn't a letter or a fine or some passive-aggressive email blast. It was sewage bubbling up through my floor drain like my house had decided to throw up. I'm standing there in socks ankle-deep in dirty water, and my phone is lighting up with a brand-new notice from the HOA. Then I look outside and see Diane Carter, our HOA president, dry under my porch overhang, filming my disaster like it's a reality show. Yeah, that's the kind of neighborhood I moved into. My name's Ethan Miller, and until this mess, Cedar Glen Estates felt like one of those safe, quiet, well-maintained places people brag about at barbecues. Trim lawns, matching mailboxes, and a homeowners association that claimed it only wanted community standards. In practice, it was a small government with a big attitude. And Diane ran it like she'd been elected queen. Diane didn't do friendly. She did deadlines, warnings per policy, and that tight little smile that says she's enjoying the power just a little too much. The kind of woman who uses the word compliance the way normal people use hello. A few weeks earlier, she'd sent out an email about a special assessment for critical infrastructure upgrades. No itemized budget, no contractor quote, no engineering report, just a dollar amount and a threat dressed up as professionalism. I replied politely, asking for the details, meeting minutes, anything that showed where the money was going. She replied 2 lines. The board has approved the plan. Payment is expected by Friday. I asked again, this time CCing the general HOA inbox. Can you share the documentation that supports the assessment? That's when her tone changed. If you choose not to cooperate, you may be responsible for consequences associated with your property. What does that even mean? It's vague on purpose, like she wanted me uneasy, not informed. Then came the morning my house turned into a biohazard. I was making coffee when I heard a sound that didn't belong in a kitchen, this low, wet gurgle, like a straw sucking on mud. I followed it to the hallway bathroom, and before my brain caught up, brown water pushed up through the drain and spread across the tile like it owned the place. I grabbed towels like that would help, spoiler it didn't, and I called emergency services. While I'm trying not to panic, Diane's email notification pops up again, HOA, safety notice, temporary hazard designation. Dated, that morning. I go outside, and there she is, Diane standing at the edge of my front walk phone, up recording, totally calm. She looks at me over the top of her screen and says, "Wow, that's unfortunate. You know this is why we needed that assessment." I just stared at her. "Diane, my house is filling with sewage." And she goes, "I'm documenting for the board. Also, we do have an emergency remediation option, but it requires owner cooperation." Then she taps a folder against her palm like she'd rehearsed it. It's a simple signature. That's when the first county truck rolled up, lights on, and 2 guys hopped out with cones and gloves. I felt relief, real relief, until Diane marched right toward them like she was the one who called them. She actually tried to take over the scene. "Hi, I'm Diane Carter with the HOA," she said, loud and confident. "This property is currently designated a community safety risk. We need to control access and ensure the correct repairs are made." One of the county guys looked at her like she'd just introduced herself as the president of Earth. He didn't say it, but his face did. "Lady, I don't work for you." Still, Diane didn't back off. She stepped around the cones, pointed at my lawn, and started giving directions like it was her house. Then this part still makes my jaw clench. She slapped a bright notice on my door saying my home was a temporary hazard under HOA authority. Under HOA authority. I tore it down immediately, and she snapped, "Touching posted safety documentation is a violation." I said, "Diane, you don't get to declare my private home a crime scene because you're mad I asked for receipts." She smiled. "I'm not mad, Ethan. I'm concerned, and the board has procedures." Of course they do. While the county crew checked the street access, Diane's remediation plan arrived 2 guys I'd never seen in clean boots with clipboards and no county markings. One of them started photographing my foundation, my siding, even my trash cans, like they were building a case file, not fixing an emergency. Diane handed me a single-page agreement. 1 page, big bold title, Emergency Access and Cost Recovery Consent. My eyes scanned the fine print and my stomach dropped because tucked in there was language about granting the HOA temporary control of repairs and limiting liability. I looked up at her. "This is a waiver." She didn't blink. "It is just a formality. Sign it, and we can make this go away faster." I said, "Or you can let the county do their job." Her voice got softer, sharper. "Ethan, if you refuse the HOA solution, the board may not be able to assist you. That could affect your standing." My standing. Like I'm in high school and she's threatening to tell the principal. And here's the part I hate admitting. For about 5 minutes I felt trapped. Because sewage isn't theoretical. It's not a letter you can ignore or an email you can delete. It's your house, your air, your floor, your stuff. It's the kind of problem that makes you want to do whatever, stops it right now, even if you don't like the terms. I stood there holding that pen, and this tiny annoying thought floated in. What if I'm being stubborn? What if it really is my pipes? What if I'm turning this into a conspiracy because I already can't stand Diane? Then I looked at her again, still filming, still calm, and I remembered that hazard notice was dated before the county even arrived. I remembered her warning email about consequences associated with your property, and I realized something simple. She wasn't reacting to my emergency. She was using it. One of the county engineers motioned me aside. He kept his voice low, professional, like he didn't want a scene. "This isn't just a routine blockage," he said. "It looks like the flow's been redirected." "Redirected," I repeated, like my brain couldn't process the word. He nodded toward the street. "If I'm right, someone altered the path so one lot takes the load when the system backs up." "One lot," I said, and it came out like a whisper. He didn't say my address, but he didn't have to. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, windows cracked, because the smell wouldn't leave, and I started pulling public records. Parcel maps, easement docs, permit filings. Anything I could get my hands on without hiring a lawyer on the spot. And there it was. A filing that showed a temporary emergency adjustment to drainage routing approved under a rushed process with no neighborhood vote attached. The map overlay was subtle, the kind of change a normal person wouldn't notice, unless it was their house becoming a sewage fountain. I printed everything. I screenshotted everything. I saved the timestamps. And then I did the thing Diane didn't expect. I didn't scream on Facebook. I didn't start a rumor. I didn't play her game. I emailed the whole neighborhood, short, clean, factual. 3 attachments. Here's the original route. Here's the adjusted route. Here's the filing date. If you paid that assessment without seeing this, you deserve to know why it was urgent. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing. Tom Reyes, the guy 2 houses down who never complains about anything, texted me a photo from last summer. His backyard was soggy, weirdly flooded, and he'd written, "I thought it was sprinklers. Now I'm not so sure." A contractor number from the permit records called me, sounding nervous. "I didn't authorize that final layout," he said. "I was told the board had approvals. If you're asking, I'd like my name off this." Diane, meanwhile, went into full damage control mode. Another email blast hit inboxes calling my message misinformation and accusing me of interfering with emergency operations. Then she tried to slap me with a violation notice for unauthorized communication that disrupts community harmony. Community harmony, right. By the time the official incident review meeting happened at the community center, the room was packed. Not dramatic packed, real packed. Folding chairs scraped, people whispered, and the air felt tense in that very specific way it does when everyone finally realizes they've been played. Diane walked in like she owned the building. Perfect blazer, perfect hair, perfect smile. She glanced at me like I was a mosquito she planned to swat. On the front screen, the county engineer pulled up the 2 maps side by side, the original route and the adjusted route that curved just enough to dump pressure toward my lot when the system surged. Then he brought up the filing record, date, time, authorization trail, so clean it felt like a receipt. Diane stood up fast. "This is being mischaracterized," she said. "The HOA acted in the best interests of the community." A board member, one of her own, looked genuinely confused. "We didn't vote on that," he said out loud into the mic. You could feel the room shift, like a heavy door finally unlatching. Diane tried to pivot. It was temporary, she said. The county engineer clicked to the memo attached to the filing. Long-term solution, it read. Not my words, not Ethan being dramatic. Their words. Diane's face did that thing where the smile stays for half a second longer than it should, then disappears because her brain realizes she's out of script. That's when the city rep spoke up. Calm, clipped official. Given the documentation and the misuse of emergency authority, the Homeowners Association Board is being suspended pending audit. An interim administrator will be assigned. Suspended. And then the law enforcement officer, who had been quiet the whole time, stood and said, "We'll need statements regarding potential falsification and coercion connected to this incident. Ms. Carter, please step aside." Diane's head snapped toward me, eyes sharp, furious, but there was nothing left in her hands. No notices, no threats, no forms. She tried one last thing, leaning forward, voice low like she could still intimidate me. "This isn't over," she hissed. But the room didn't belong to her anymore, and neither did my house. Some people think power looks like loud voices and fancy titles until the paperwork shows who's really been pulling the strings.